Hi and welcome to Patrik's Tech Lighting. In this episode, I will dig into the topic of hosting a static website in Azure. We will look at how it works, how to set it up, and the possibilities, and I will also answer the question if it's really cost efficient. So let's start digging into it now. There are three services within Azure which are often mixed up. On one hand, we have Azure Static Websites, and then we have Azure Static Web Apps, and we also have Azure Web Apps. Do you notice the subtle differences in the naming? In this video, I will focus on the details of the Azure Static Website, but it's still important to get a high-level comparison of the different services in Azure. Azure Static Website, now this is a feature you can enable on an Azure storage account. You get a blob container along with a URL for your website. Azure Static Web Apps, this is a service which has more features and became generally available in May 2021. It has tight integration with GitHub and Azure DevOps, meaning you can set up a CI/CD pipeline from day one and has overall more functionality for website hosting. Azure Web Apps, now this is a PaaS service which removes the requirement for you to deploy and configure Azure virtual machines for web application. This gives you a full-fledged web hosting environment with the ability to run server-side scripts such as PHP and ASP.NET. But let's get back on track and talk about Azure Static Websites. We can summarize this feature as A. It's enabled on blob storage account. B. There is no extra charge for this feature. You will, of course, have to pay for the storage account and the data transfer. You can integrate this service with our content delivery network, CDN. See my other video how that works. Link is in the description. HTTP is natively supported by the Azure storage account. For HTTPS support, you will need to use this together with a CDN. You can use this server with its own custom domain when using a CDN. Let's get into a demo to see how we can configure this. In the Azure portal, we open up our already created storage account. We click on Static Website. Now this is where we can enable the static website. We click on Enable and Save. As you can see, it has now created a new storage container called Web. We open it up, and here is where we can upload a file. So let's upload the website which is contained in this one index.html file. The file is uploaded. We can go back, and before we open up the URL of the website, we need to specify an index document name. This is the name of the web page that the Azure storage account returns when the request is made to the root of the website or any subfolder. We save, and we now try to access. Awesome, it works. Let's have a look at the certificate that is presented to our browser. We can see that the subject name matches the domain of the website. If we look further in the SAN names, here we can see a long list of different names. Now, what are some of the interesting settings that we can have a look at? If we open up the configuration pane of the storage account, there's an option called Secure Transfer Required. If you enable this option, you will only be able to access the website using the HTTPS protocol. Let's review some of the functionality that this offers within Azure. If the server returns a 404 error and you have not specified an error document when you enable the website, then a default 404 page is returned to the user. Cross-origin resource sharing, CORS, for Azure storage is not supported with static websites. CORS is an HTTP feature that enables a web application running under one domain to access resources in another domain. If you set up redundancy in a secondary region, you can also access the website content by using a secondary endpoint. Because data is replicated to the secondary region asynchronously, the files that are available at the secondary endpoint aren't always up to sync with the files that are available in the primary endpoint. There is no way to configure headers as part of a static website. Now, this feature, it does not support Azure Active Directory either. So if you want to protect the websites from being accessed, you can use network security rules available for the Azure storage account. It has basic means of protecting where you can, for example, restrict which IP addresses are allowed to access. This was a short primer on static websites in Azure. Remember, the key takeaways are: you can store static content and websites which only require client-side scripting. There's no extra charge for this except for the storage in the storage account itself and the transfer fees. You have limited functionality. If you need a more fleshed out service, look into Azure Static Web Apps and Azure Web Apps. If we now go back to the cost, you can store 1 GB of data in a blob storage account for a bit more than $1 a month. At traffic costs, internet traffic costs, 100 GB is $8 to $9 a month. So with less than $10 a month, you can host a 1 GB website with about 100 GB outgoing traffic. Pricing scale depending of course on the amount of storage use and traffic. So having had a good time learning this, we can now take a break until next episode, which is next week. Take care and see you.